This talk is about how anxiety makes me a better designer and how I can steal some design techniques to calm my anxiety. And we also see the one of my teams. Let's start with a fact. Anxiety sucks, but we all have it. It's a survival mechanism. We all get it. Some people get it when it's healthy, when there's a trigger, there's a danger, and your body and mind are focusing on escaping that danger. Some other people get it more often. My flavor of anxiety is called generalized anxiety disorder in adults, or GAD, which means that I have anxious thoughts pretty much every day, randomly, with or without trigger. Love it. Really do not recommend it. It really sucks, but here it is. This long-term condition, however, has led me to learn a lot about anxiety. I have learned coping mechanisms with anxiety in my personal life and in my professional life. And today I'm going to share a workshop technique that I use when there's a lot of anxiety around building, designing something, especially at the beginning of a project. Let me tell you the tale of the chatbot, or a tale of anxiety-led design. Imagine you are just working on your own thing very happily, and then someone shows up, and normally it's the product manager who has this very thankless job. He shows up or she shows up and says, hey, drop everything you're doing. We have to build a chatbot. The big bosses want it. We need to reduce calls to the contact center. It's really urgent. Let's just do it. I think that if you're in this room, I'm assuming that you have experienced something similar to this: solutions versus problems. You're not being given a problem, you're given a solution, the chatbot. The story of the chatbot, by the way, is a mishmash of things that have happened in my past, so that I'm not going to blame a specific company. We'll keep it a bit shrouded in mystery what happened there. But something similar happened to me multiple times, where big stakeholders give you a solution and you have to build it, right? When you're given solutions rather than problems, quite a few things happen. The first thing is that these stakeholders invariably think of the chatbot, but they all mean slightly different things. For instance, we have the head of operations who thinks of chatbot as a widget with buttons there and says users can just go on the website, fire off the chatbot, find the right thing they need, bam, they don't need to call us. Because, for instance, they can just change booking right away, clicking a button, done. Conversely, the head of engineering thinks of a chatbot as an open-ended system where you can just write what you want following your natural language, and they can train the machine learning system behind the scenes, the artificial intelligence, so you don't have to navigate through buttons. You can just write what you mean, and bam, you find the answer, and you don't have to call us. And then you have maybe the head of content. They have spent a lot of time crafting a lot of FAQs, and they're already on the website, and they help customers, and they think, let's go quick to market. Let's just ship something that helps customers find the right answer to what they need. So you, as a designer, as a developer, as a product team, what do you build, right? This is an opinion fest. Everybody has got different opinions, and this leads to uncertainty, right? And uncertainty can lead to anxiety. And this is the second thing that happens, at least to me, when it's about solutions rather than problems. I often have a flight or fight response. This is the survival mechanism that we all have. Interestingly, we also have other kind of response like freeze or appease, but it doesn't really roll off the tongue as well. We all know about the fight or flight response, and also that's very common. In my case, I start thinking, whatever I do is going to be very difficult, because if I design what they want, the users are going to be damaged because we didn't do any research, we didn't understand the problem very well, and they're going to blame me and they're going to fire me. But if I just say, you know what, I'm not going to do it because I want to do research, I want to do design, I want to do proper process, they're going to fire me anyway because I'm a blocker, right? So I start catastrophizing, and that helps nobody, right? So this is where I deal with quite often. I hope you don't have the same, but in case maybe this talk can help in some parts. Also, what you have is that when you got the flight or fight response, that leads to lack of empathy. If you think about it, that's a self-defense mechanism, right? So the clue is in the name, self-defense. It's all about you and your own instinct to flee the danger. You have a strong physical response where your heart rate increases, you breathe faster, your mind just focuses on fleeing the danger. You're not thinking creatively. You're not thinking, oh, maybe the stakeholders who want this chatbot have done the research. They have their data. They might be under pressure themselves to deliver. No, all you're thinking is they're out to get me. I need to quickly get away from this danger as fast as possible. And this leads to lack of empathy, which we know is one of the requisites to design a good product or a good service for your users, right? And if many other people who were in the same room as you when the product manager says drop everything have the similar flight or fight response, then there's a collective anxiety. Everybody's just thinking about getting rid of the danger as quick as they can, and nobody is thinking creatively, and this can lead to bad decisions. It could lead to jump into solutions without understanding the problem, which penalizes the users. It might mean cutting corners on accessibility, as it often happens. It might mean tech debt, because you just ship whatever you want, wherever you can, in the very little time you're given, and so on. And this is really a shame for your product, for your users, but also for your company, because maybe users are not going to use that thing that you put there that often, right? So let's fix anxiety. I think it can be done. There is a strong need for body and mind to come back to a state of relaxation. That's how we are hardwired, right? So we all want to get back to a state of relaxation where we can be creative, where we can enjoy each other's company. And at work, we can bounce ideas off each other. We are not just focused on solving a problem with the first solution that we have in mind, but we are doing our best job. So in the interest of making very good portfolios, we want to get back to a state of relaxation. So let's fix anxiety. It's hard, but it can be done. I think it takes anxiety to fix anxiety. We can harness it. It sucks, don't get me wrong. I would not recommend it. That needs to be clear. But given that we have it, I have learned over the years how to recognize my own symptoms of anxiety and how to use them to my advantage. For example, I'm a very curious person, which is great, right? Everybody likes curious people, and I like that about myself. But I'm also anxious. The combination of the two things lead me to ask a lot of questions, because asking questions and understanding the answers and probing and asking why, the 5 why technique, 7 whys, or just mostly understanding more and more a particular problem makes me feel more in control. It calms my anxiety, because of course, anxious people deal with uncertainty less well than non-constantly anxious people. So I found that asking questions really helps. But interestingly, that makes me a better designer, because over the years, by constantly asking the right questions to the right people, I started getting a lot of feedback from the rest of the team saying, that actually helped me a lot. Maybe they're not anxious. They're just not that bothered like I am. And yet those answers reduce uncertainty for everyone involved. So I start asking questions to a wider group of people, not just my core team members, but also senior stakeholders, which I call asking questions on steroids, because they need to make it easier for me and for my team to work, right? So if you ask a lot of questions, you can get a lot of good answers, reduce uncertainty, and design better. So this is where the workshop structure that I come up with can be helpful for you. It does work for me. I hope it works for you. I'm going to explain how it works. You might be familiar with the stakeholder interview technique. If you're not, it's normally a one-to-one session or one-to-many session where you have one stakeholder who is a person in charge of strategy or budget, or who has a vested interest in the success of whatever thing you're doing. And then there is you, researcher, designer, facilitator, product manager, delivery manager. It doesn't matter really, as long as you are there asking the right questions to understand what's the strategy behind this thing that you want us to do. You're putting money and company time in motion, you get a budget. So why are we doing this, right? And stakeholder interviews are extremely helpful. You get to probe and to understand that specific person's needs, vision, how they measure success, what do they know about the users, and so on. And it's brilliant because you learn so much from a person who is not part of the core team, because the core team could be composed of designers, researchers, developers, and they, by definition, are not business stakeholders because we are there to produce something, right? So you need that knowledge to produce something that works for your users and for your company or your organization. So stakeholder interviews are fantastic. However, there are two limitations. One is time. If you're pressured for time, having a series of one-to-one stakeholder interviews can be extremely time-consuming, because you have to organize an hour session with this person, then you have to analyze all the notes that you've taken, you have to group them, you have to synthesize them, and it's great, brilliant, only if you have time. Second, the problem I have with the stakeholder interview is that when you probe into a stakeholder vision and need, more often than not, it clashes with that of another stakeholder, like in the case of the chatbot. Head of operations, head of content, and head of engineering all had different views. So if you have a one-to-one stakeholder interview, you can unearth their own individual vision, but they don't talk to each other, right? In theory, they should, but sometimes they don't, because maybe there's silos in the organization or else. So when that happens, I find that an issue, because you are still in a state of uncertainty and therefore anxiety, which I don't like. And there's time, it's time consuming. So what I thought is, let's combine these two techniques, the stakeholder interview and the strategy canvas, into one big workshop. If you're not familiar with the strategy canvas, I'm going to show you in a minute, but it's literally just a place to organize key strategic elements of a service, a product, a project, and there's a million flavors. I'm not married to one, use whatever works for you. I'll show you the one I use. But it's basically just an artifact to bring together visions and other key strategic elements that you can reference throughout your project. So here's the structure of the workshop. You can call it whatever you want, vision strategy workshop or goal setting, whatever corporate jargon you want to use, whatever, you know your stakeholders better, whatever attracts them, use that, it doesn't matter. In fact, it's a safe space to be heard and share ideas and, crucially, anxieties. We are all humans. We all have this tendency to be anxious about something. So we might as well just bring it to the fore as early as we can and be humans together. Just listen to each other, put aside the corporate buzzwords, tell me about what makes you anxious, and let's solve that together. I set aside 2-3 hours. It takes some time, depending on how many stakeholders you have. Ideally, you shouldn't have more than 5-6 stakeholders. If you have more than that, it can be a bit unwieldy, but sometimes that's how it is. It's out of your control, and 2-3 hours could be a good time, with breaks, of course. So you invite the stakeholders, like I said, and the core team. The stakeholders talk, share their knowledge, their vision, and the core team is there to learn and to ask questions, and to also, crucially, break down tribe barriers. Similar to the way we are hardwired with anxiety, we are so attuned to the concept of our tribe, because 30,000 years ago, when there was the saber-toothed tiger that everybody references, we only had our tribe, our intellect, to defend ourselves from danger. We don't have natural defenses. We don't have claws. We don't have a body armor. We can't fly. We have a very soft skin. So we are very easy prey for the saber-toothed tiger, which incidentally, we hunted into extinction, but we're still anxious about it. Go figure. So that said, the tribe concept is really interesting. We are so attuned to changes in body language of our tribe, because if one of our tribe mates starts running and says, oh my God, there's a saber-toothed tiger, immediately you go into flight or fight mode, and the whole tribe starts running away and gather children and whatever they can and run away. So when you are in this situation where someone says, drop everything, it's super urgent, it's very easy that collective anxiety spreads. And there's also a strong self-defense mechanism as a team where it's us versus them. The stakeholders don't understand, they're just dropping this on us, they don't know any better, and so on. So these stakeholders, I hope, for the sake of your organizations, are not stupid. They're just far removed from what you do in your daily life. Let's break that barrier. They're not monsters. They're just other humans with their own needs. We just need to come together and understand each other so that we can do our best work and crucially get back to a state of relaxation and be well by our users mostly, because ultimately they're going to be damaged. And if our users are going to be damaged, so will be our organizations, and selfishly our portfolio, maybe our salaries, who knows? I don't want to catastrophize, but there's a lot of ramifications to not doing your best work, right? So you bring all these people together, and the goal is to agree on a direction together without anxiety. This is an example of strategy canvas. There's, again, millions out there. Use whatever, create your own, doesn't matter. I'm really not that precious. The key point is that you fill it in together. Normally you have things like your vision, who are your users, business needs, deadlines, dependencies. But what I really want us to bring to the fore is that one, that bit about risk, worries, concerns, and mitigations. That's the part about being humans. Everything else is about being corporate. And sometimes that doesn't work because we're all still people with our own needs, anxieties, pressures, so on. So you've got this thing that needs to be filled in, right? Technically by the stakeholders. So the facilitator, who can be, again, researcher, designer, delivery manager, whoever feels like doing this, will help these people to fill that in together. The first thing is to ask stakeholders to write down their answers without influencing each other. The write down part is very important because we are going to compare answers, and you will see how in a second. Use whatever works. Mirror, like in this case, Word, chat. Again, you know your stakeholders, you know your setup, whether you're in person, whether you are online, it doesn't really matter. As long as they write somewhere that then you can copy and paste and compare their answers. This is effectively a stakeholder interview on a piece of paper, whether it's digital or real. You can ask questions like, what's your vision? It's important. What do you know about your users? Again, really important. How do you measure success? Always critical. And then let's go into anxiety territory. What worries you about this? Again, don't give me the corporate spiel. Give me what worries you about this, because you're a stakeholder. And the definition of stakeholder is, like we said before, somebody who's got a vested interest in the success of a thing, right? To me, that means that you are legitimate to be anxious about it. You are entitled to freak out about this thing. So just let's be anxious. It's fine. It's your job. So tell us what worries you about this. And sometimes it's like, nothing. It's all fine. Don't believe them. It's not true. There is always something. So if you can probe a bit more, things like, what's the worst that can happen? Magically, there's a lot that can happen. And that can help you and everybody understand each other a bit better. So you ask this question, and then you can go a bit more open-ended. We're still humans, so we are creative. We got things we are passionate about. Just ask questions like this. What's a question you'd like to answer that we didn't ask? And that can spark some interesting conversation that you didn't think about it because you didn't know you had to know. And that's really good. So then what you do, when everybody's finished writing, you take a break, and then you start copy and pasting all the answers to the same question, and you put them all there for everybody to read and compare. For instance, in the example of the chatbot, you've got these three visions. They're very different, right? First of all, they're all solutions, and they're all different. And at this stage, unless you have very terrible stakeholders, and so far I've been lucky enough not to have those, they start realizing we have a problem here because all these people are asking the core team to put money and time into something that is not clear. And everybody starts realizing we are wasting money if we don't solve this for the core team. I had incredibly understanding senior stakeholders telling me things like, we don't leave this room until we've solved this for you guys, because otherwise you're just going to do a botched work and what's the point? And I was really impressed because I didn't have to do anything. It's just there, right? You're all thinking different things, so you have to solve it for us. And this is really helpful. And then if you keep probing, you can learn from one another. And you've got things like, what worries you about this? And as people write down, they start reflecting on things, and they could come up with answers like, we're sticking a plaster on something bigger. Why are customers even contacting us in the first place, right? You jump straight to solution, but you might reflect and says, what's the problem here actually? And then somebody might say, actually, a chatbot is technically really complex. It's a huge architecture and loads of content. Are we sure we want to do this? It's a good point. And people might worry about customers' conditions. Maybe they're traveling abroad, they have no internet connection, and we are asking them not to call us, but to use a chatbot. So is that going to be okay? And again, you keep probing, and what's the worst that can happen? That reveals very interesting information for you as a designer or as a developer as well. For instance, waste of time, reputational risk, wasting money on something that nobody uses. And this is all very good. It's a bit weird at first because everybody started gung-ho, you need to deliver this right now. But then everybody's like, wait, what are we? But it's good to do it now rather than when you've written millions of lines of code and refactoring it costs a lot of money, redesigning it costs a lot of money. It's best to uncover this now. All these discrepancies, the sooner are solved, the better. And I've seen in the past that with this kind of exercise, the vision can change. So rather than what we've seen, create a collection of buttons or an open-ended machine learning, blah, 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 could be something like our customers will know everything they need so that they won't ever have to contact us except for emergencies. And that's very different, right? And on a practical level, it can lead to very different decisions in terms of design and development. So rather than just go and build a chatbot, it could be something like, all right, we need to improve the website and the app so that customers won't have any unanswered questions or doubts. Maybe we need to improve our content design or offer a frictionless service. That's very different, right? So what about the chatbot? Who knows? We don't know. Maybe it's going to be useful in the future to support the vision, or maybe it will be banned forever. We don't know. What it's important is that we moved from the solution to the problem space, and everybody's been heard. Everybody had the chance to feed what they're worried about and to learn from one another. And this is where you foster empathy and you reach better design decisions via managed anxiety. And this is where anxious people are a pain, but can be helpful. And this is it for me. Very open to take questions. Thank you very much.